This animal became famous for looking cute, but its real power is almost impossible to believe. The axolotl looks gentle and almost unreal, yet it is a living amphibian with biology that scientists are still trying to understand. This opening frames the axolotl as a quiet mystery, not just a cute aquarium animal. An axolotl is not a fish, even though people often call it the Mexican walking fish. It is a salamander, an amphibian, and its scientific name is Ambystoma mexicanum, a species tied to the water systems around Mexico City. That identity matters because the animal's real story begins with amphibian biology. What makes it so strange is that it keeps many features normally associated with a young salamander. Instead of transforming fully into a land-living adult, it remains aquatic, keeping its tail fin, soft body shape, and external gills. The strange body plan is central to everything that makes the species famous. This condition is called neoteny. The animal can become mature enough to reproduce, but it still keeps a juvenile-like form, as if part of its childhood never fully closes and its underwater life simply continues. It is mature in one sense, yet still carries the shape of youth. Most amphibians change dramatically as they grow. A tadpole becomes a frog, and many salamanders leave the water. The axolotl takes a different path, staying in a form built for lakes, canals, and slow underwater movement. That choice keeps the animal tied to water for its entire visible life. The most beautiful sign of that life is the crown of gills around its head. Those feathery branches are not decoration. They are breathing structures, spreading into the water and helping the axolotl absorb oxygen. The image is beautiful, but every part of it has a practical function. When the gills move, they can look like soft coral or living feathers. This is why the axolotl feels almost magical on camera, with a face that appears calm and a head framed by delicate pink or dark plumes. Those soft branches make the animal instantly recognizable in close underwater shots. Captive axolotls are often paler, pink, white, golden, or spotted. These aquarium colors are famous online, but they do not represent the whole story of the species, especially the darker wild animals that once moved through Mexico's waters. Captive colors can be lovely, but they can also hide the wild reality. In the wild, axolotls are usually more camouflaged. Their bodies can be dark, mottled, and earthy, better suited to canals, mud, plants, and shadows than the bright aquarium forms people see in pet shops and videos. The wild form belongs to mud, plants, shadows, and slow canal water. That difference matters because pet axolotls and wild axolotls live very different lives. Captive animals may be protected, fed, bred, and watched carefully, while wild axolotls face polluted water, shrinking habitat, and dangerous competitors. This split between pet and wild animal drives the emotional center of the story. The axolotl's native home is linked to Xochimilco, a network of canals and wetlands in Mexico City. This place is not just scenery. It is the last living landscape tied to the wild survival of the species. The habitat is specific, limited, and impossible to replace with an aquarium. Long ago, the Valley of Mexico held a much larger system of lakes and wetlands. As the city expanded and water systems changed, much of that habitat disappeared, leaving the axolotl with far less room to survive. The loss of wetlands is one reason the wild story became so fragile. In those waters, the axolotl is a predator. It hunts small aquatic animals, worms, insects, tiny crustaceans, and other prey by snapping and sucking food into its mouth with a sudden movement. Even a gentle-looking axolotl is part of an underwater food chain. Its soft appearance can hide that predatory side. The same face that looks harmless in an aquarium belongs to an animal built to sense movement, wait in the water, and strike quickly at small prey. That contrast keeps the animal from becoming only a soft mascot. But the axolotl's most famous ability is regeneration. If it loses a limb, it can regrow a new one with bone, muscle, nerves, and skin arranged in a functional structure instead of a rough scar. Regeneration is the moment where the story becomes almost unbelievable. This is not simple healing. Regeneration means rebuilding complex body parts, and axolotls can regenerate limbs, tail tissue, parts of the spinal cord, and even portions of some organs under the right biological conditions. This is why simple words like healing are not enough for the axolotl. For scientists, that ability is extraordinary. Humans can heal wounds, but we cannot naturally rebuild a lost arm or repair major nervous system damaged the way an axolotl can rebuild tissue. The comparison with humans shows how extraordinary the process really is. When an axolotl is injured, cells near the wound behave in unusual ways. They help form new tissue and organize growth, creating a biological process that researchers study in hopes of understanding repair, development, and regeneration. The wound becomes a place where development begins again in controlled form. That is why axolotls became important laboratory animals. Their embryos are useful for research, their bodies can show regeneration clearly, and their biology offers clues about how vertebrate tissues grow and rebuild. Research turns the animal into a window into vertebrate growth and repair. Scientists do not study them because they are cute. They study them because they challenge what seems possible for a vertebrate body, especially in the relationship between injury, cells, nerves, and regrowth. Its cuteness may attract attention, but its biology is the deeper reason. At the same time, the laboratory story creates an emotional contrast. The axolotl is common in research tanks and aquariums, but the wild animal that inspired all this fascination is disappearing from nature. That contradiction makes the axolotl both familiar and painfully vulnerable. Pollution is one of the threats. Dirty water changes the conditions that axolotls need, affecting oxygen, food sources, health, and the delicate balance of the canal ecosystem. Water quality is not background detail, it is survival itself. Habitat loss is another major threat. Canals can be altered, drained, crowded, or cut off from healthier wetland areas, making it harder for wild axolotls to find safe places to live and reproduce. A canal can look alive while still becoming dangerous for a sensitive species. Invasive species make the problem worse. Fish introduced into the system can eat axolotl eggs or young, compete for food, and change the ecosystem in ways the native salamander did not evolve to handle. Introduced fish can damage the next generation before people even notice. Urban pressure surrounds the species on every side. Roads, buildings, agriculture, tourism, and water management all shape the remaining habitat, so saving axolotls is also about protecting a living wetland inside a huge city. The animal's crisis is inseparable from the city surrounding its last habitat. This is why the axolotl's conservation story is not simple. It is not enough to keep the animal in aquariums. The wild habitat itself must remain alive, connected, clean, and able to support natural populations. Conservation has to protect a place, not only breed an animal. Many people meet axolotls first as pets. They see the smiling face, the waving gills, and the soft underwater movement, but they may not realize that the wild version is one of the most threatened amphibians on Earth. A popular pet can still be a warning sign for a disappearing wild species. The pet trait can make the species feel safe because captive axolotls are visible everywhere. But visibility in tanks does not mean security in nature, and a species can be famous while still vanishing from its home. Fame can make an animal visible while its real home keeps shrinking. That is the heartbreak of the axolotl. It became a symbol of cuteness, regeneration, and strange beauty, while its original waters became more fragmented and dangerous. That is why the story should feel gentle, but not comfortable. The wild axolotl also carries cultural meaning. Its name and history are connected to Mexico, to ancient language and stories, and to a landscape that has been changed for centuries by human life around water. Its cultural roots make the loss feel deeper than a biological statistic. Protecting it means protecting more than one animal. It means protecting canals, plants, water quality, local conservation work, and the idea that an urban wetland can still hold rare life. The habitat itself becomes part of the animal's identity. The axolotl reminds us that evolution does not always follow the path we expect. It can keep youth, live underwater, regrow body parts, and still be fragile in the face of pollution and habitat loss. Its biology is strange, but its need for clean water is simple. Its external gills look like a crown, but that crown is also a reminder of dependence. The axolotl needs clean water around every delicate branch of tissue to breathe and survive. The crown is beautiful because it is alive and vulnerable. Its regenerative power seems almost supernatural, but it cannot regenerate an entire lost ecosystem. No animal, however remarkable, can simply regrow a destroyed habitat by itself. Regrowth inside the body cannot replace protection outside the body. That is why the contrast is so powerful. In a tank, an axolotl can look like a tiny magical creature floating in clear water. In the wild, its future depends on canals that humans must choose to protect. Aquarium beauty and wild danger have to be shown side by side. Scientists may learn from its cells, its nerves, its genes, and its ability to rebuild. But the deepest lesson may be simpler. A species can be biologically amazing and still need help. The science is exciting, but it cannot become an excuse to ignore the wild animal. The axolotl refuses to grow up in the usual amphibian way, but the human story around it has to mature. We cannot only admire the animal, we have to understand the place it came from. Admiration has to become responsibility if the story is going to mean anything. If its wild waters recover, the axolotl becomes more than a laboratory miracle or a pet. It becomes proof that a damaged urban ecosystem can still support rare and ancient life. Recovery would make the axolotl a symbol of repair beyond the body. If those waters continue to decline, the world may keep the axolotl in aquariums while losing the real wild creature from its birthplace, which would turn a living wonder into a symbol of absence. Loss would make the same animal a symbol of what captivity cannot save. So the axolotl is both gentle and urgent, cute and scientifically astonishing, famous and endangered. Its story asks us to look past the smile and see the fragile world reflected in the water around it. This is why the final emotion should be wonder mixed with urgency. The animal that refuses to grow up is not refusing change. It is asking whether the world around it can change enough to let it remain alive, wild, and more than a beautiful face behind glass. The question is no longer whether the axolotl is amazing. It clearly is. Behind the cute expression is a serious question for nature. Can humans protect the only wild home of a creature that has already taught science so much about youth, injury, healing, and survival? The real question is whether its wild water can remain alive.